Hello, Serious Survivor here. Today I want to talk about the value of gold and silver and other precious metals in the apocalypse. In an apocalyptic environment or situation, one in which the normal means of economy, the normal means of trade have either been done away with or lost due to the aftermath of whatever event may have started this, the value of gold and silver in the apocalypse will range tremendously depending on the situation you're in and depending on the location you're in. In the initial stages of an apocalyptic event, when everyone's bugging out or bugging in or panicking and such, in the first 72 hours, I would expect gold and silver to still hold some trade value, especially within urban areas. Now, in an urban area, you tend to have a lot more people. And the more people you're around, then the greater your chances, the greater the percentage or your odds will be that some of these people will trade various items for gold and silver. Gold and silver have always been held to a very high standard throughout the years. Everyone has put a value on the two precious metals, and even currencies throughout modern times, up until the last few decades really, everything has basically been based off of the gold standard. We had to have gold backing up the currency. It's not so true anymore. But in an apocalyptic type of event, I do expect gold and silver to still retain some value, but only in certain situations. Now, in the initial stages of an event, when everyone is panicking, when there's total chaos, gold and silver will still have value, and that's because this is the stage that everyone's looting, rioting, robbing, and things such as that. So anything that held value in the real world is still going to hold value in the beginning of the apocalypse, because people aren't going to accept the fact that the world may have changed completely, permanently. So these people are still subject to one of man's biggest downfalls, and that's greed. They're going to be willing to trade for gold and silver, especially in the early stages before everything starts running out, before the water is completely gone or out of the stores and such, before the food is completely gone. People are definitely going to trade for gold, silver, even paper money possibly. So it's definitely a commodity that if I had gold and silver to trade in the apocalypse, I would try to trade it off first. That would be my first thing I use for trade, because there will come a time after the first 72 hours, 96 hours maybe, when people start realizing that the food is not being produced, the goods are not being delivered, and it may be this way for good now. People are not going to hold such a high value of gold and silver anymore, and they're going to look at more tangible items. So this will basically boil down to the population density of the area you're in. People in a more rural area, people that are used to having to fend for themselves every day, the less people there are around, the more you have to do yourself. So if you and your family are alone, basically, bugged out to a forest location, or you're out in the wilderness, or just in a very rural setting, then you're not going to have the conveniences or the luxuries, if you will, of the urban environment, which is already pre-built shelters from all the buildings, the abandoned buildings. Supplies still in the back of some of the stores, things such as that. It'll take a while to get through all of that. So the people in the country environments where there aren't many people around, these people are going to be self-sufficient, or at least to a very high degree self-sufficient. And I do believe that the further you are away from the urban areas in the initial stages, that the less value gold and silver will hold. Because I know if my family is fed only if my hunt is successful that day, then I'm not going to care much about a gold coin. I'm going to care about that deer that I can take down or something similar. But if you are in an urban environment, then there are a lot more people around. So this means that people are going to trade with each other. If they're not, at odds with each other, then some type of trading and bartering will take place. And the more people that are there, the more pressure there will be to create some type of currency to help people even out these trades, because that's the purpose of currency, is to even out trading. So you trade paper money or gold, silver coins, that type of thing, for goods. And with set prices, then everyone can even this out, and, supposedly people are getting a fair deal this way. So in an urban environment like that with a lot of people around, then I do believe gold and silver would still hold value even after the first initial stages of the apocalypse. It would have to be a completely devastating event. And what I mean is, the more people that there are around, the less self-sufficient each one of these people will be. They will come to rely on certain people to provide food. They will rely on other people to purify the water. They will rely on other people for protection, and the list goes on. So the less self-reliant a person is, the more likely they are to barter for gold and silver. And this is because in a larger group, a network like that, in a city, an urban area, and there are survivors, with these people working and trading with one another, the gold and silver give them a form of currency, and I do expect it to actually take hold and still be used in an urban environment. But be careful with any barter or trade you might make in a situation like this. Now, out in a more country setting where there are a lot less people around, gold and silver isn't going to hold much of value to most because, like we said earlier, these people are self-sufficient. They're already learned to hunt their meals every day or every other day, fish, hunt, trap, anything they can do, and also grow their food. They've learned how to do a lot of things, and the things that gold and silver would buy would be more of a luxury to these types of survivors. So the off-grid survivors, the ones that are way off, they're going to be totally self-sufficient. I would expect, gold and silver to probably hold, if any value, very little, but most likely no value whatsoever. It'll be more along the lines of, can you trade me ammunition? Can you trade me firearms parts? Can you trade firearms? Can you trade weapons? Anything such as this, things that they can't produce in the wild, that's what they're going to want. Gold and silver won't have much use unless you're going to melt it down and make bullets out of it. So for the off-grid ones, the ones that are truly in the middle of the wilderness, first of all, you're probably not going to run across them to trade with, but if you do, gold or silver is not going to make much of a difference to them. The more urban you get, the better chances you have of being able to trade this gold and silver and being able to obtain the goods you need for it. So the more people that are around, the better your chances are. If you're stockpiling gold or silver specifically for this type of event, I can't say it's never a bad thing, because in time, the goal of surviving the apocalypse would be rebuilding afterwards. I mean, if it's not going to be rebuilt, then all you're doing is surviving for the rest of your life. So there is going to be a rebuilding phase if there is any number of people left on the earth. And as the rebuilding phase begins and people begin to once again gravitate towards each other, towards the urban areas, then there will need to be a form of trading and commerce, and you'll have to base the prices and the currency off of something. And the standard that's been used since before history has been gold and silver. And I wouldn't expect that to change much now. So as the rebuilding phase begins, people will probably begin trading with gold and silver at the first onset of the event. Those that leave the town will find less value in it. Those that are still in the urban areas, a few weeks after the event and things settle down, if they do, if it's not a complete without rule of law and, everyone's basically trying to kill everyone, then there will be some forms of trade and barter beginning to establish. And once again, the more people that are around, then the more greed there is, which always makes gold and silver a valuable item. And when the rebuilding begins, then there is a definite need for a currency that's backed, a currency that has the same value to you as it does to me. I can print paper money all day long, but it's worthless if I'm not backing it with anything. So currency backed with gold and silver would probably begin to circulate once again. And I would say that every urban area would begin having their own types of currency until things become standardized. So stockpiling gold and silver probably shouldn't be the first choice unless you already have a bunker and you're completely safe for the next 20 years. But for the average person who may have to bug out, gold and silver are very heavy items, so you're not going to be able to carry a lot of it with you. So gold and silver are definitely an item that would hold value. And it would all depend on one factor, and that's how many people you're around. And especially if you have an urban area that's fairly close, say within 50 miles to another urban area, then you're going to want to establish trade routes at some point in time. Maybe not immediately, but somewhere down the line. And this, once again, is where gold and silver will be probably the most valuable form of commodity at that time. I definitely wouldn't put all my stock in them, because if the event that causes is an apocalyptic scenario, does devastate population down to, say, maybe 5% of what the world is, if it's truly a tremendous event like that, then there aren't going to be enough people around that gold and silver is going to be simply a paperweight at that point, or something you can melt down and make something else out of. So the type of event is really what determines the value of gold and silver. And the more recoverable the event is, the more value silver and gold is going to hold. The longer it's going to take to recover, then the less value it's going to hold in the beginning until it finally does recover. So this is something that everybody just has to make up their own minds if they want to stockpile this or if they don't. Me, I think it's a good idea to have some. And for others, it may be their last thought, if any thought at all. So I hope the video was informative. Thanks a lot for watching. And for now, Serious Survivor, out.